Well, good evening, everybody, and I'm back to play another concert. Tonight's is going to be a lot of fun. For those of you that may not have seen the announcements on Facebook, I'm doing a concert entitled Crazy Words, Crazy Tune. All songs with either just a completely ridiculous title or very funny words. They won't all be comedy songs per se, but I thought this was a great idea. In fact, it occurred to me because I was discussing some sheet music with Alex Hassan, who's a pianist that I've known for years, who also sells a lot of old sheet music. And he said, you know, some of these titles are so crazy you could make a concert out of that. Why don't you do it for one of your Sunday night performances? So here I am, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to play some things that I haven't done before, perhaps some you haven't heard. But let's start out with one of the Ragtime classics, which definitely has a crazy title. From 1901, this was written by a man named Clarence C. Wiley in Oskaloosa, Iowa, and he was a pharmacist, so he just named it off the shelf behind him, Carbolic Acid, a hot rag. Thank you very much, everybody. There's Carbolic Acid, a hot rag. I see some of you typing the title here in the chat. You're not spelling it correctly. You're spelling carbolic acid correctly, but the rag is misspelled on purpose. It's carbolic acid, spelled C-A-R-B-A-R-L-I-C, carbolic. So we're going to deal with a lot of crazy titles tonight. And one of the songs that came to mind immediately when I first had this idea last week is to play one of the great ragtime era tunes, which came out in 1914 when World War I had just started. The United States was not in the war yet. And three guys got together and wrote this wonderful song called The War in Snyder's Grocery Store. And here is an original copy of the sheet music I brought out to show you. Before World War I, the cover artwork on sheet music was really the best. And later on, it became more simple and then got simplified even more, of course, by the 1950s when rock and roll came along. The quality really decreased. But as you can see, poor old Gustafson Snyder here is having a war in his grocery store. The song was written by Hank Hancock, Ballard McDonald, very popular lyricist. He might have written the words to Back Home in Indiana. I'd have to double check that. And also Harry Carroll, the wonderful songwriter who wrote Trail of the Lonesome Pine and I'm Always Chasing Rainbows. This was one of the very few hits that Harry Carroll ever had that were really big. Anyway, you know what I'm going to have to do tonight, because I do not sing, is I'm going to read you a lot of the lyrics to these songs. And I think you're going to get a kick out of it. At least I hope so. This one I know almost by heart. But I brought out the sheet music for the ones I don't. Anyway, this is how this one goes. The Warren Snyder's Grocery Store from 1914. Hans Gustav Snyder, a local provider of groceries, canned goods, and such, had heard of the war till himself and the store were both what is known as in Dutch. His brains he'd been feeding on so much war reading, he woke up one night in a fright. He rushed down the stairs, fell over 2 chairs, and turned on the grocery store light. There were eggshells bursting near and far, above the Russian caviar. A Bismarck herring by itself was pushing all the French peas off the shelf. An Irish potato started to cry when a Spanish onion hit its eye. Frankfurt is fighting all over the floor, howling and growling, we're the dogs of war. There was Sonny Jim, upon a horse, swooping down with all his force. The paprika growing weaker shouted out, won't you open the door? And a couple of tough Vienna rolls shot a poor Swiss cheese all full of holes in the terrible war in Snyder's grocery store. Second verse, Dutch pumpernickel had joined a dill pickle, attacking the fresh navy beans. A Limburger cheese greatly strengthened the breeze, and anchovies, prunes, and sardines were fighting an army of Dago salami. And that's only half what he saw. He jumped into bed, put ice on his head, and went on the wagon once more. Now, when I used to perform this with the late Ian Whitcomb, he had his own line to end the song with on the second chorus. And a couple of tough piano rolls shot a poor Swiss cheese all full of holes in the terrible war in Snyder's grocery store. Thank you very much. The Warren Snyder's Grocery Store. Of course, being a sheet music collector, there's so many of these crazy tunes that I could have played for you tonight. There's only so many that I had time to learn and practice. But that's one of the joys of sheet music collecting, is finding these really funny and clever tunes. I see a request for Rough and Ready. Remind me to do that a bit later on. I'll be happy to do it. Now, I will do some of the standard rags for you tonight, because a lot of them had crazy titles. You know, you think about Scott Joplin. half of his music is all named after trees and flowers. And, and then there was his piano student, Arthur Marshall. I'm going to play a rag he wrote in 1908 for you, which is called Ham and. No eggs. Just ham and. I think that was kind of meant as like a diner order, like what a waitress would do in a diner. Anyhow, it's a really fun one, and I realized I hadn't played it in a while. Ham and. Thank you so much. Ham and by Arthur Marshall. All the Marshall rags have kind of crazy titles. And of course, swipesy was a made-up term, and then one of them, Arthur Marshall, said when he wrote this rag, he was lost for a name and just happened to think of a peach, so he called it The Peach. And then there's another one which he was playing for the music publisher, and after he played it, Mr. Stark, John Stark, the publisher, said, well, that one's got plenty of kinks in it, so let's call it Kinklets. As you can tell, this was very serious music. Well, usually at about this point in the program, I mention that I do accept virtual tips for these performances. All you have to do is send in a tip on PayPal or Venmo. The information is in the postings on all three websites. And I'm happy to do requests to kind of earn those tips as well. I'll probably be able to get to a lot of them tonight. And I did receive some requests prior to the concert on Facebook, as usual, which I've written down and I'm planning to play them. I think what I'd like to do next is a little bit of music by Charles L. Johnson, who was the king of ragtime composers from Kansas City. He was extremely prolific, wrote tons of music. Some of them had really fun titles. And I just realized I really ought to play at least two of them. And his most famous tune of all came out in 1906, and it was among the first pieces to sell 1 million copies. The first was, of course, After the Ball. It took Maple Leaf Rag a number of years to sell 1 million. I'm not sure exactly when that happened, but in 1906, Charles L. Johnson was working for, well, it must have been the Carl Hoffman Music Company in Kansas City. The first edition was published by Carl Hoffman, and he was doing this tune, and one of the, I think this is the story, I'd have to go back and read the book to be sure, that one of the janitors came by and offered him some dill pickles. And so that is how this tune got named the Dill Pickles Rag. Thank you so much. Dill Pickles Rag. See, someone's asking here, were most of this man's rags about food? No, they weren't. I mean, they all had different names. There's a great one called Teasin' the Cat, and Crazy Bone Rag, of course, which came out in 1913. They all had different names. I just recently got an original copy of Doc Brown's Cakewalk, which is one of his very earliest from the late 1890s. And one of my treasured possessions, just about the most treasured possession I have in my house, is the letter that Charles L. Johnson wrote to Johnny Maddox just a few weeks before he died in 1950. It was a real nice letter from Johnson, which was about Johnny's first record, Crazy Bone Rag. Johnny also introduced to me a tune that Johnson wrote in 1909, which is a true ragtime waltz. This has become one of my favorites. I think the best of them all is Echoes from the Snowball Club, but I'm going to play this one for you today. And Johnny wrote an introduction for it, which is not in the published music. There is no introduction, and the published music, and I have always really liked it. So now we're going to do another tune with a crazy title from 1909, Charles L. Johnson's Tabasco Ragtime Waltz. Thank you very much. That's Tabasco, a Ragtime Waltz by Charles L. Johnson. Not exactly a real slow, sedate waltz, but good for a variety in tonight's program, I think. Oh, Dave, I'm glad you noticed. You know, it is sure nice to be able to play this piano with it correctly in tune, isn't it? It makes all the music sound so much better. And taking care of an instrument of this age just takes a lot of knowledge. It takes someone who's very, very skilled. And so I'm so glad I found Chris Drury. He's up here this weekend, believe it or not, working on another friend's piano. Well, I got a request. I think this came from Janet on Facebook prior to the concert tonight. No, I'm sorry. This was someone else. That's another tune I'm doing. Oh, isn't that awful? I'm sorry. I try my best. But I thought this was a good idea because the words are kind of crazy. In fact, it's a medley of two songs, and I do them together because they were performed this way in a movie. They're both ragtime era tunes, one from the Ziegfeld Follies of 1912, and the others from 1914. We're going to do the Abba Dabba Honeymoon, and follow that up with Row, Row, Row from the Ziegfeld Follies. These were both performed years later in 1950 in a movie called 2 Weeks with Love by Debbie Reynolds and Carlton Carpenter. It became the first soundtrack recording from a movie to sell over 1 million copies. And I had the good fortune of getting to know Carlton a little bit. I had dinner with him in New York once and just thought the world of him. So here we go with Abba Dabba Honeymoon and Row, Row, Row. Hey, thank you so much. Abba Dabba Honeymoon and row, row, row. I'm going to tell you some of the funny words to row, row, row. I'm not sure that I should do this or not. Kids, plug your ears. And then he'd row, row, row. Way up the river, he would row, row, row. A hug he'd give her, and he'd kiss her now. And then she would tell him when. And then he'd kiss, and then they'd hug, and then they'd kiss again. And then he'd row, row, row. Way up the river. Oh, oh, how he'd row. Then he stuck in an oar, and she asked him for more. And then he'd row, row, row. And then they stopped by a rock, and he pulled out his watch, and then they'd row, row, row. Those are some of the Dick Kreckle words to that song. Well, now let me do the one that I had promised to Janet on Facebook, I think it was. I had to pull out the sheet music for this. I've never performed it, but Johnny used to do it. And here's the original copy. You get to see the cover artwork. This dates from World War I. And it's got a crazy title. Goodbye Ma, goodbye Pa, goodbye mule with your old hee-haw. Words by William Herschel, music by Barclay Walker. And it's kind of a simple tune. You may have seen the drawing on the cover of the music of the big tall soldier. Well, the title on the inside of the music is Long Boy, but no one ever calls this tune by that title. It's always Goodbye Ma, Goodbye Pa, Goodbye Mule with your old hee-haw. From 1917. Let's do it now. Thank you very much. It's a short, cute little tune, written in 1917, the year the very first jazz records were made. And I just noticed something kind of neat where the chorus starts. It's called refrain on this copy of the music. It says jazz. That term had just barely been invented at the time. Oh, I have so many fun songs I want to play for you tonight. Let me check all three websites. I want to make sure they're all working and I'm not missing anyone's comments here, you know. Oh, got almost 50 people on Facebook. That's terrific. I appreciate it, folks. Let's see. Well, I usually watch YouTube because I have more viewers on there, but I don't want to forget anybody else. Let me think for a minute about what I want to do next. I think I should do the tune that I've used as the title song for tonight's concert before I do too many more. So this dates from the 1920s, and here's the original copy. Crazy words, crazy tune, vo-do-de-o-do. Crazy Words by Jack Yellen, Crazy Tune by Milton Ager. Milton Agar. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. They were two of the great songwriters of the 20s, of course, perhaps forgotten today, but they were extremely famous in their time. They wrote some of the music for the movie King of Jazz with Paul Whiteman. And now we're going to do Crazy Words, Crazy Tune, Vote-Do-Di-O-Do. This song was so popular, a few years later they wrote the Vote-Do-Di-O Blues. It's from 1927. There's a guy I'd like to kill. If he doesn't stop, I will. Got a ukulele and a voice that's loud and shrill, 'cause he lives next door to me and he keeps me up till 3 with his ukulele and a funny melody. Crazy words, crazy tune, all that you'll ever hear him croon. Vote-Do-Di-O-Do-Do-Do-Do-Do. Sits around all night long, sings the same words to every song. Vote-Do-Di-O-Do-Do-Do-Do-Do. His ukulele daily, how he'll strum, vum vum vum, vampin' and stampin'. Then he hollers black bottom, crazy words, crazy tune. He'll be driving me crazy soon. Vote-Do-Di-O-Do. Let's see. I have to use sheet music for a few of these. Tempo torrid is the marking. It says right at the end of the music, slap wood. So I tried it. Crazy words, crazy tune. At least that's a short version of it. When I do my concerts, sometimes I kind of go through the music chronologically. That's how I structure the history and the performance. So I'm going to stick to that to a certain extent. And the next tune here is an Irving Berlin Ragtime era song. I consider it a classic because I've heard many people play it. While I rest here for a minute, let me read some of the chat. Oh yeah, okay, I'll do Rough and Ready pretty quick. Maybe I'll slip it in after this one. Here's the original copy of the Irving Berlin song, and it's called The Old Maid's Ball. The words to this are really funny. Irving wrote the words and music. Irving Berlin in 1913. Here's how it goes. Talk about your funny masquerades. Talk about your funny looking braids. Did you hear of the 4 old maids who gave a fancy ball? Old maids gathered from every town, each one dressed up in a funny gown. I was asked to go, and so I hurried down to the old maid's ball. There were old maids short and tall, dancing round the hall. One who knew us drew up to us. She was older than St. Louis. Miss Melinda Rand led the female band, and when they played, Here Comes the Bride, 4 old maids sat down and cried. Someone hollered, There's a man outside, and broke up the old maid's ball. Second chorus. There were old maids short and tall, dancing round the hall. One who knew us drew up to us. She was older than St. Louis. Miss Melinda Rand led the female band. And one old maid named Geraldine, oldest maid I've ever seen, said, "Tomorrow I'll be 17," and broke up the old maid's ball. And there's the old maid's ball. Thank you very much. Some of these tunes may seem a little bit short. Some of them I haven't played that many times, and the other thing is that there are often multiple verses or choruses that normally somebody would sing them. So that's why they may seem a little bit short. Well, I saw requests for a novelty piano piece that has a crazy title. So let me go ahead and play that for you now. This was actually written by Charlie Strait, even though co-composer credit was given to Roy Bargy. And just by coincidence, I've played this a couple of times recently, and I really do love it. I've added a tag on it from the player piano roll, which is really wonderful. This is called Rough and Ready, spelled something like Rufeneddy, Rough and Ready. Thank you very much. Rough and ready. Okay, folks. Well, feel free to send in additional requests as well. I've got a lot more that I plan to play for you tonight. Oh, Bob Milne's here. Thanks for tuning in, Bob. Someone asked me about George Bruni's on Twitch. Yeah, I certainly have heard of him. More traditional jazz than ragtime, I think. Well, here's another song with a crazy title. And this occurred to me just because it's nuts. And it's also a great tune written by E. Ray Getz, Joe Young, and the prolific Pete Wendling, was one of the great QRS piano roll artists. This came out in 1916, and it's the tune that sort of helped start the Hawaiian song craze. There were many, many of them written after this. This is the first one that was such a huge hit. And here's the original copy of it, Yakahula Hiki Dula, a Hawaiian love song. Very serious music here. And Yakahula Hiki Dula. Yakahula Hiki Doo. I won't read you all the words to this one, but it's fun and I love to play it. So let's do it. Yakahula Hiki Dula. Thank you very much, folks. If you didn't notice, Al Jolson's on the cover of that. He introduced it in a show called Robinson Crusoe Jr. And as it happens, I thought I might play Another tune, which I believe was written for the same Broadway show, Robinson Crusoe Jr. It had to be the same. The song came out the same year, 1916, and it was originally introduced by Al Jolson, and it's really funny. Years later, the song was revived by a good friend of mine, Ian Whitcomb, one of the British rock stars in the 60s. And before he left the rock and roll world, he had this one hit, which is not a rock and roll song. And it was a big enough hit that they reprinted the sheet music with Ian's picture on it. And it took me a long time to find it. I wish I could have found it while Ian was still alive and had him autograph it. But I finally found it from 1966. Here's the copy that has Ian Whitcomb's picture on it. Where did Robinson Crusoe go with Friday on Saturday night? I thought it would be kind of fun to show you this. I did perform this song with him, which is quite an honor. And let me read you some of the words. If you've never heard this tune, it's really funny. Lyrics by Sam M. Lewis and Joe Young. Music by George W. Meyer. Thousands of years ago, or maybe more, out on an island on a southern shore, Robinson Crusoe landed one fine day. No rent to pay and no wife to obey. His good man Friday was his only friend. They didn't borrow or lend. They built a little hut, lived there till Friday, but Saturday night it was shut. And where did Robinson Crusoe go with Friday on Saturday night? Every Saturday night they would start into Rome. Then on Sunday morning they'd come staggering home. On this island lived wild men and cannibal trimmin'. And where there are wild men, there must be wild women. So where did Robinson Crusoe go with Friday on Saturday night? This copy of the music actually has Ian's own chords and so forth in it, slightly different from the original. It follows his record exactly. I remember talking to him about it. He was a little bit frustrated that his record of that technically wasn't a hit because it bubbled under at 101 on the Billboard charts. Where did Robinson Crusoe go with Friday on Saturday night? Something like that. Thank you very much. Well, go ahead and send in some more requests, folks. I'll need a few to fill out the concert tonight. Oh, I've heard that before. People say, oh, you have a nice bass talking voice, but he claims he can't sing. Well, I really can't. I had a hard time getting through solfege when I was in college, just to pass the music theory class. And not only that, my opinion is that people who can't sing shouldn't. Unless you hit the right notes, that's a problem. I know I have a loud speaking voice, but hitting the right notes is a very different thing. Oh, I know what I'll do next for you. This one is really funny. This is the first time I've ever played this song, but I've known about it for years. And the first time I heard it, it was performed by Frederick Hodges. It was my first year at the West Coast Ragtime Festival. And then later on I found the original sheet music. So let me show it to you. But I have to preface this with a little warning. This song is no reflection on me as a person. It has nothing to do with me. I did not write it. It is just a song that I'm going to play. And it's called I Love Me. I'm Wild About Myself. This was written in 1922, I believe. Actually, the copyright's 1923. Music by Edwin J. Weber. Words by Jack Hoynes and Will Mahoney. There's another copy of the music with Will Mahoney's picture on it. This one has the Howard Brothers. They must have introduced it on Broadway a year before it was copyrighted. They sang it in the passing show of 1922. And so I'm going to read a lot of the words to this. This is so funny. There's extra choruses at the back of the music here. I might read these as well. When people write their songs of love, they write of one another. It's always sis or ma or pa, a sweetheart or a brother. But love songs that they've aimed at me have all gone on the shelf. I don't think that is fair, so now I'll write one of myself. I love me, I love me, I love myself to death. I love me, till I'm all out of breath. I stop at every slot machine that I should chance to pass and give myself a hug and squeeze as I look in the glass. Oh, I love me, I'm wild about sweet me. I love me, only me, so I'm content, you see. I like myself with such delight, I take me right straight home each night and sleep with me till broad daylight. I'm wild about myself. And now I'm going to, okay, let's do the second chorus. I love me, every place I go. I love me, and at a movie show. I take myself right by my arm and push me through the crowd and listen to myself read me the titles right out loud. Oh, I love me, I love to squeeze my hand. I love me, it always feels so grand. With me, I get right in my tub. I let myself give me a rub. Oh, how I love to feel me scrub. I'm wild about myself. Okay, now I'm going to skip to a couple of the additional choruses. This is a good one. I love me, for better or for worse. I love me, for me and not my purse. I like to have a secret that I share with me alone, because myself can trust me not to make my secret known. I love me, I'm my sweetheart's beau. I love me, not one can stand a show. I took me walking down the lane, told me a joke that was profane. I'll never speak to me again. I'm wild about myself. I love me, I think me is a prize. I love me, 'cause me is just my size. I take me in my parlor and I sit on my settee, and then I lift myself right up and bounce me on my knee. I love me, I never leave my sight. I love me, I'm with me day and night. Myself and me, we have a fight, and I can't fall to sleep at night till I kiss me. Then I'm all right. I'm wild about myself. Thank you very much. I love me. I love myself to death. No, I love me. I'm wild about myself. Sorry, that's the subtitle. That is just a song. It has nothing to do with me. Well, I thought that would be funny. Yeah. Well, it's after 7 o'clock here in Durango, Colorado, and so I have to make a couple of announcements. First, I do accept virtual tips for these concerts if you're so inclined. There's no requirement, but I appreciate it. It's very helpful with my career. And there's PayPal and Venmo information, and also a P.O. box on my website for checks. And unfortunately, I will not be home and will not be doing another virtual concert for a couple of weeks. I'll be leaving later this week for the World Championship Old Time Piano Playing Contest in Oxford, Mississippi. I no longer compete. I'm the MC of the event. I encourage you to come in person if you can to some of these things. And following that will be the Scott Joplin Ragtime Festival in Sedalia, Missouri. And I fly home on a Sunday, June 4th. And so I will not be able to do a virtual concert for, I think it's two Sundays. And then I will be back. I believe the date is June 11th. I didn't have a chance to look it up before the performance tonight. June 11th, I will be back. Somebody double check for me that that's a Sunday. If you don't mind, one of you in the audience. And I'm pretty sure I know what I'm going to do already. I'll be doing the last concert in the Music by Decade series. We're going to do the 1930s, 1930 to 39, including one of those opening medleys that last for 30 minutes. So that's probably what I'll do on June 11th. So I hope many of you will be allowed. Sorry, I was reading one of the comments. He says, Adam isn't allowed to compete anymore. Oh, that's sweet of you. Thank you. That's true. I don't compete anymore. Anyway, I hope most of you can join me for that next Sunday evening virtual concert, June 11th. Oh, that's a great tune, Dave. Who threw the overalls in Mrs. Murphy's chowder? Yeah, I have a record of that. There's so many good tunes I could have done tonight. Maybe we can do a sequel to this concert as well. That's one of them. Okay, yeah, good. June 11th is correct. And there was another one. Oh, I'll tell you another one I wish I could have learned in time for tonight's concert is Who Paid the Rent for Mrs. Rip Van Winkle when Rip Van Winkle went away? Let's do another little bit risque song, shall we say. Here's an original copy of it. I mean no one any offense by this song. It is just a comedy song. And please remember, this was written in 1925 when times were slightly different. And music was written by James V. Monaco. I think he wrote You Made Me Love You earlier on. I think that was Jimmy Monaco. Words by Edgar Leslie, prolific Tin Pan Alley composer who's important but kind of forgotten. Ian Whitcomb told me that he knew Edgar Leslie personally. Anyway, here's an original copy of this wild tune. Masculine women, feminine men. Which is the rooster? Which is the hen? And I suppose I should read you some of the words again this time. Hey, hey, women are going mad today. Hey, hey, fellers are just as bad today. I'll say, go anywhere, just stand and stare. You'll say they're bugs when you look at the clothes they wear. Masculine women, feminine men. Which is the rooster? Which is the hen? It's hard to tell them apart today and say. Sister is busy learning to shave. Brother just loves his permanent wave. It's hard to tell them apart today. Hey, hey. Girls were girls and boys were boys when I was a tot. Now we don't know who is who or even what's what. Knickers and trousers, baggy and wide. Nobody knows who's walking inside. Those masculine women and feminine men. Okay, second chorus. Masculine women, feminine men. Which is the rooster? Which is the hen? It's hard to tell them apart today and say. Auntie is smoking, rolling her own. Uncle is always buying cologne. It's hard to tell them apart today. Hey, hey. You go in to give your girl a kiss in the hall, but instead you find you're kissing her brother Paul. Ma's got a sweater up to her chin. Pa has a girdle holding him in. Those masculine women and feminine men. Thank you very much. Masculine women, feminine men. That song was really quite a hit at the time, believe it or not, and has been recorded many times over the years. Well, I'm going to need some more requests. I've seen a couple that I really don't know by heart, but you can go ahead and keep trying. In fact, I might just take a breather for a minute and wait for some requests to come in on the chat. I'm a little exhausted tonight because I also played a feature-length silent movie this afternoon. Oh, Peter, okay, I'll play that for you maybe at the end of the concert. Novelty, okay, I'll do that for you. Happy to do it. Let me check all the websites because I haven't done that yet. Oh, that's a great tune, Bob. I had someone else before I had you, and I'll have someone after you've gone. Marzi Jokes would have been a fun one. I didn't have time to learn it. I've never played it. I'm checking Twitch as well. Nothing there. Peacherine Rag. I could do that. Don't know Barber Pole Rag. Yeah, I don't know My Canary Has Circles Under His Eyes either. That's Domingo Mancuello who does that on our CD. Let's do one of the classic rags here. Peacherine Rag by Scott Joplin. And I really don't know what a peacherine is. I think it's a real fruit, but it's certainly a strange title, so I think it kind of fits in for tonight's concert, don't you? Peacherine Rag. Thank you so much. Peacherine Rag. Have to do a good old Scott Joplin number once in a while. Well, here's another song that I thought about playing for tonight's concert, which it kind of has a crazy title, but I bet the melody will be very familiar to all of you. From about 1937, and I know one of these songwriters was Cliff Friend, a prolific Tin Pan Alley composer. This tune became the theme song of the Looney Tunes cartoons. We're going to do The Merry-Go-Round Broke Down. The merry-go-round broke down. Thank you, folks. Well, go ahead and send in some more requests for me. I prefer if it's a tune that kind of fits the theme for the concert. It doesn't have to necessarily. Oh, I saw a couple of requests for Zippity Doo Dah. I might do that. Hi Diddly Dee, I would have to have the sheet music in front of me. I played that during the virtual concert I did of all Walt Disney music. Let's see. Well, I have one more that I had planned to play ahead of time that really is really a ridiculous song title. You know, I don't know that, Loretta, the house is haunted by the echo of your last goodbye. I don't know that without the sheet music in front of me. Those of you who have listened to my virtual concerts before may have heard me mention, not too often, but a couple of times, one of the pianists that I got to know, who I just really, really admired very, very much. He was also just the nicest guy I've ever met in my life. His name was Irving Fields. He was one of the last of the old Jewish songwriters from New York. And he was quite a virtuoso pianist, but wrote kind of catchy songs, simple tunes with fun titles and so forth. Even though he was really a Tin Pan Alley composer, you know, in the sense of anyone else who was writing music in the 30s and 40s, he especially loved Latin music, and that's what he was known for. His two big hits came out in 1946, Miami Beach Rumba and Managua, Nicaragua. And so I first started corresponding with Irving Fields in about 2012. He was way up in his 90s and wrote me wonderful letters. And I finally got to meet him when he was about 98 and even played duets with him. And he kept playing at a restaurant in New York until he was 100 years old, Nino's Tuscany on 58th Street. And anyhow, since that time, I've been trying to collect as much of his sheet music as I can find, just for the fun of it. They're not songs that many other people have seen, and so it's really fun for me as a collector. And plus, since he became my friend, I just love his music. And of course, it was recorded by very famous and important bands and musicians. You know, people like Xavier Cugat and his orchestra, Guy Lombardo, Freddie Martin. Dinah Shore did one of his tunes, Louis Armstrong. And anyway, here's one of the rare pieces that I found, and I found this one in time to have him autograph it for me in person. We're going to play from 1947, a pop tune called The Goofy Gal of Tagusi Galpa. And here's the original sheet music that Irving signed for me. Irving Fields, not Irving Berlin. And it features the Three Sons on the cover, a popular instrumental trio of the 1940s. Perhaps some of you remember the Three Sons. Now, I am not going to use the original copy of the music that he signed for me because I don't want to hurt it while I'm turning the pages. I copied it, and I should read the words for you. Lyrics were written by Albert Gamsey, who Irving said was his favorite lyricist that he worked with, and that's obviously because he wrote the songs that were a big hit for Irving. He wrote the words to them, and this is the notation on the music says this is a rumba calypso. Now, whether I'm truly playing it that way, I don't know. A ship got in the other day with Shipwreck Mike, the stowaway. He just returned from a wonderful place. This is what he had to say. I met a gal one day down Honduras way. Say that baby caught my eye. She's the goofy gal of Tagusi Galpa. Goofy about a guy. How could a lovely pip fall for just a drip from a poor man's family? Yet the goofy gal of Tagusi Galpa went and said, CC. She's a honey to a guy who has no money, yet she only gives the air to every multimillionaire down there. She could have caviar and a motor car, yet her heart went on a spree for the guy who's goofy about the goofy gal of Tagusi Galpa. That's me, CC. The goofy guy, that's me. Thank you very much. There's a little tribute for Irving Fields. Later on I found the record that the Three Sons made of that tune. I've listened to it a million times. That's the first time I've ever played it. So obviously it's worth collecting some of this sheet music that I spend too much money on. Okay, well, send me some requests, folks. Maybe it's time to do Zippity Doo-Dah. I saw that request. That's certainly a goofy title, but a song that everybody knows. Unless I see something else pop up real quick, I'll do it right now. Let's do it. I don't know the verse to the song by heart. I did play that during my Disney concert. But anyhow, we'll just do a short version of this since I had a request for it. Thank you, folks. Zippity doodah, zippity a. Another crazy tune with crazy words. Won the Academy Award for Best Song, I think, the year Disney's movie Song of the South came out in 1946. Might have been a year later. I'm not sure. Zippity doodah, yeah. Oh, there's a request. That's kind of fun. The Oceana Roll. Yeah, I would play it for you, but I think I better practice it before I perform it. Yeah, sometimes that's the way it has to be. Now keep sending me a few, and I could use one more request for tonight's concert. I would really like to get in one more for you. Let me check all the websites. Hi diddle diddle, shoot, I could do that one. That's a great idea. Okay, I see a request here. This is from Alco on YouTube. Does Alco have something to do with trains, like Alco diesel engines? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've got trains on the brain. Let's do Hi Diddle Diddle. We're going back to the mid-1920s now, and I'm going to play for you this really fun pop tune. I adore George Olson's record of this. Hi Diddle Diddle, said the cat to the fiddle, and the cow jumped over the moon. Certainly another crazy tune. Hi, diddle diddle. Thank you, folks. Alan, I just played Zippity Doo-Dah. I think I'll try and end the concert with a couple more ragtime pieces. I got a request for a piece of music that I wrote. This comes from Peter there on YouTube. And I suppose it does kind of have a crazy title. It doesn't matter very much. I'm going to play it anyway. And this is, I had fiddled around with composing when I first started playing the piano. I never really took it seriously. I think this is the first fairly good rag that I wrote, and it's really more in a novelty piano style. And I named it after the little town in Texas where my grandfather was born, which is called Novice, Texas. It's south of Abilene. There's hardly anybody. It's a population of about 130 people, something like that, 140 at the most on a good day. And so I came up with kind of a funny title of Novice Novelty. And I'll play it for you now. Thank you so much. That's my own piece, Novice Novelty. Well, somebody give me one more kind of hot rag or something to end the concert with tonight. I'll go ahead and kill time here while I wait for another request. I'm sure looking forward to seeing many of you in person when I go to the contest in Sedalia here in the next few weeks. And don't forget that the next virtual concert will not be until June 11th. That's a Sunday after I get home from the Scott Joplin Festival. And I'll be doing the 1930s as my theme for the concert. And I have already made the final executive decision. I hate to tell you this, for several reasons, that for the summer season, I'm going to only be doing virtual concerts every other week. In part because I'm going to be out of town a couple of times, and it doesn't make sense to me to continue doing it and advertise that it's going to be every week when it's really not. So I think it's better to say every other week just for the summer season. During the winter, I have less work as well, so I really still need the virtual concerts. And I don't want to push all of you too much for the tips. So that's part of the reasoning behind it. I hope you will all still listen every other week. And Oh my, I got some good tunes here. That could be kind of a fun one. Someone's asked me for On a Circular Staircase. I haven't played that in a long time. I could end the concert with that, of course. Let me think. What should I do? Let me think for just a second. Let me do it. Don't have any other ideas? I'm going to play two songs for you that date from the early 1940s. And these were both written by a wonderful songwriter named Glenn Rowell, who was a close friend of Johnny Maddox. And I ended up collecting a lot of Glenn's music. And here are two of the tunes. We're going to do Seven Little Stars and The Man in the Moon. And then a tune, which actually, this has words to it. I've never heard anybody sing it. But I think it fits in for tonight's concert, Crazy Words, Crazy Tune, because the title is On a Circular Staircase. So here we go with the two Glenn Rowell tunes. Thank you very much, folks. I just played those together because Circular Staircase is kind of short without another tune. There's only a chorus. There's no verse to the song. Well, I hope you've all enjoyed this concert. I saw a request for Tom Breyer's music. I thought about doing that, but nice to do something a little different once in a while. And I thank you all so much for listening tonight. I appreciate those tips very much, and hope to see some of you in person pretty soon. If not, join me back on all three of these websites for another virtual concert on Sunday, June 11th for the 1930s decade. We're going to celebrate that. Thanks so much, and good night for now, folks.